Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. Ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. Ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. Hayya ala salah, hayya ala salah, hayya ala falah, hayya ala falah. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, La ilaha illallah.
قائما محمد الوسيلة والفضيلة الترفيه والمقام محمد بسم الله نحمده ونصلي ونسلم على رسوله الكريم أما بعد فأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وقال الملك إني أرى 7 بقرات سمان يأكلهن 7 عجاف صدق الله العظيم. So, dear brothers and sisters in Islam, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Continuing from the past sessions about the story of Prophet Yousuf alayhi salam, Prophet Yousuf alayhi salam is now, according to the story that we were telling from Holy Quran, that right now Prophet Yousuf alayhi salam is in prison, and Allah Almighty has chosen what He has chosen, and through trials and tribulations Prophet Yousuf moves from his family to the well, and then from well he was sold out to the Egyptian market, and from the Egyptian market he reaches to the house of the king, and from the house of the king he goes to the prison, and right now he is interpreting the dreams of 2 prisoners who were workers and servants in the palace of the king of Egypt. And Prophet Yousuf alayhi salam has demonstrated his skills and abilities to interpret the depth of dreams. And these dreams were shared by the servants of the palace of king, and they were interpreted correctly by Prophet Yousuf alayhi salam. And when he says to them that they should mention him in the palace of the king, so that king realizes what he might have forgotten to have imprisoned Prophet Yusuf alayhi salam. But Allah Almighty says in the Holy Quran that the Satan has forgot the message of Yusuf alayhi salam, and it went out of memory from those servants. And if you are recalling that entire story, so we are connecting that with the verse number 43, in which Allah Almighty says, وَقَالَ الْمَلِكُ, and when the king says, إِنِّي أَرَى, I see a dream, سَبْعَ بَقَرَاتٍ سِمَانٍ, 7 fat cows, يَأْكُلُهُنَّ, eat up, سَبْعٌ عِجَافٌ, that they eat up 7 thin cows, 7 lean cows. Now this is a message, or this is a dream that is told by the king of Egypt to his servants or to his notable people or the men of wisdom. They were known at that time. And king says, Ya ayyuhal mala'u aftuni fi ru'yaya, that if you have some skills, can you show your skills to interpret what I have seen in my dream? In kuntum lirru'ya ta'burun, if you are able to interpret my dream. Now just to have an idea that how deep the idea of the interpretations of dream is, and it's not simple a walk on the moon, or it is not simple a very sort of straightforward thing. Just imagine if you see in your dreams this kind of a dream in which you see 7 fat cows eat 7 thin cows. How would you interpret that? And just imagine what kind of the difficulties that you would undergo. And would you really be surprised at what kind of the dream is it? Are you able to draw a distinction whether it is the real dream that needs interpretation? And is it coming from Satan, or is it coming from Allah Almighty? Is it coming from the angelic sources or the satanic sources? Just try to draw a distinction on your own. Then you can grasp the depth of the message of Prophet Yusuf alayhi salam. Then you can have some idea that why does Allah Almighty says that it is the biggest gift that Allah Almighty has granted to Prophet Yusuf alayhi salam. Just imagine that. And now when this, I would say, puzzle is presented before the notables of that time, the men of intelligence of that time, the people with knowledge of that time, when king presented that quiz, I would say, or that puzzle, I would say, now the response of the notables of the king was that this might not be a true dream. It may be a haphazard, it may be just out of blue something which has no true interpretation. He says, قالوا أضغاث أحلام وما نحن بتأويل الأحلام بعالمين. Allah Almighty says that Allah Almighty says that these people, they did not respond with knowledge. And then what happens is that one of that worker who was imprisoned on the accusation to poison the king, and when he shared his dream with Prophet Yusuf, and when Prophet Yusuf interpreted his dream and he was released and he started again working in the palace of the king, he recalls the entire story. Yes, there was a virtuous man. There was a man with knowledge in the prison. He interpreted my dream very correctly. And can I go and get back to him and share this dream, and could have the best interpretation, could have the correct interpretation for the king? So he makes a request to the king and he says that, can you allow me to go back to the prison and meet with with Yousuf, with the Prophet Yousuf alayhi salam, and that request was met and he allowed, and he comes to the prison to Prophet Yousuf alayhi salam, and then he says that this is the case, our king has seen this dream, so we need a kind of an interpretation. So Prophet Yousuf alayhi salam, without making any offensive or uncomfortable comments, he straight away attempts to help that man, and he interprets the dreams of the king. Now what is that interpretation? Look, the genius, the excellence, the wisdom of the Prophet Yousuf alayhi salam. As I told you that you just check yourself, your intelligence, because you are also very intelligent. So just check your intelligence, that I said that what if you see that dream? 7 fat cows are eaten up by the 7 lean cows. How would you go about it? Would you ever be able to draw a distinction whether it is a right dream, an angelic dream, or is it a satanic dream? Your response might be like as the notables of the king's courtyard. Whatever the king's notables said, that it is not a good dream. It may be from the Satan. But look at Prophet Yousuf alayhi salam and the knowledge that he was given by Allah Almighty. He says this can be interpreted with the knowledge that I have been given by Allah Almighty, is that the next 14 to 15 years, the agrarian cycle of the Egyptian economy would be that the next 7 years, they would produce their crops and they would have the fertile 7 years. But the next 7 years, the first 7 years, the fertile crop. And then the next 7 years, there would be a drought, there would be a famine, no food at all. So Prophet Yousuf alayhi salam interprets this dream in this way, that king has been told by Allah Almighty symbolically that you should take care in the next 14 years. The first 7 years of the Prophet through crops and production, agrarian production. And the next 7 years, there would be hard time for your nation. So Prophet Yousuf alayhi salam advises that man also, the servant of the king, and he says that this is the interpretation. Now what is the way out? What is the practical way? What is the strategy to deal with this kind of the trouble and the problem? So Prophet Yousuf alayhi salam says, you should keep some portion, or you should store some production, some crops in store, and live your 7 years modestly and moderately, and keep that stored food for the next 7 years when you would face the hard time, when you would face the difficult time, when there would not be any food at all in the stores of the government, when there would be lackness of the food, when you would face the famine, the difficult time of the famines. This is the strategy that was given and advised by Prophet Yousuf alayhi salam to that servant, and servant takes that message to the king, and he informs that there is a very virtuous, very wise guy by the name of Prophet Yousuf alayhi salam. He is living in the prison, and he has interpreted your dream this way, and he has advised us that we should store our food for 7 years in order to overcome the difficulties that we would face later on in the 7 years. The king is impressed. The king is impressed. And king wants to help Prophet Yousuf alayhi salam, right? The king decides to release Prophet Yousuf from the prison. So as soon as the order is sent back to Prophet Yousuf alayhi salam, Prophet receives this message. This was, of course, a good message, that For no guilt, for no crime, he was being imprisoned, and he was actually waiting that he should be released. But as soon as the king announces that the Prophet Yousuf should be released from the prison, and as soon as he receives those orders from the king, Prophet Yousuf declines. He says, no, first decide, why was I imprisoned? What was that case about that lady? Do you remember that? So the accusations must be cleansed. My character should be cleansed. I would not live my life with the impression in the public that I committed a sin and I was imprisoned, and now by the mercy of the king I have been released from the imprisonment. No, not at all. First clarify that. And this was really a brave and courageous act from the Prophet Yousuf alayhi salam. And my dear friends, it is here that we should reflect. We should pause and reflect on that. That whenever we are accused, on day-to-day life, we are accused. We are actually blamed for many things. So the Prophet Yousuf's story tells us that without clarifying those blames and accusations, you should not move ahead. You should not have this impression in the public that you are living a life by the mercy of some authoritative figures, some powerful figures, some people with money, that they have favored you and you're living and you're surviving. No. Prophet Yousuf's story tells us that respect, self-respect is far more important for a gentleman, as Prophet Yousuf was. For a religious figure also, for a missionary figures also, for a people with gentle heart also, it is a very clear teaching that whenever we are blamed for any reason, whenever we are accused with the false reasons, we should clarify that first, that how did we come into that? And unless and until they are clarified, we should accept the releasement from that. We should not live under the impression that some, as I mentioned, that some king, some authoritative figure, some president, prime minister, stuff one and like this one or that one has mercy upon us and we are released from that. No, that's wrong. So the teaching that we get, or the lesson that we get out of the teachings of the Prophet Yousuf alayhi salam is clarify your accusations. And this is what the king has to do it. King asked those ladies who was guilty at that time, and that lady clarified that there was no evil intention. There was no evil intent from Prophet Yousuf alayhi salam. There was not even an evil advancement from Prophet Yousuf alayhi salam at that time. And in this way, the accusations were turned out to be false and fictitious and fabricated. So after it becomes public that Prophet Yousuf was neat and clean in his character, and without committing any guilt, he was unfairly imprisoned at that time. And when it became public, Prophet Yousuf alayhi salam chooses to come out, and then Prophet Yousuf alayhi salam, by the will and by the blessing of Allah Almighty, was given what? A good position in the Egyptian government. And what was that? It was the Ministry of Economy, the Ministry of Agriculture. And he was given that power. So Allah Almighty reminds us and him. He says, look, you were in Palestine living a nomadic life. I have picked you from the nomadic life to the civilized life. I have imprisoned you, but look at what is ahead. The ahead is the government of the Egypt, and a very powerful position. But this powerful position is not just because of the power. This position is because you are a virtuous man. You are a religious man. You are a gentleman. You are a man of honor. You are trustworthy. Since you are a virtuous and trustworthy man, I have bestowed upon you the power of this world, as well as the character and the virtuous features that I have given you in your personality. So this is what Prophet Yusuf alayhi salam has shown and demonstrated and showcased to us, that this is a life worth living. This is a life which should inspire us to live and to pursue in our future. So, and on this note I end, and I would continue from here to in the next Jummatul Mubarak on the same story. But before I move on, I think we were supposed to be discussing some of the rulings, the basic rulings of Islam. So in previous two sessions we have discussed that there are 4 faraid of wudu. Now wudu is fard for the namaz, right? To recite to touch the Holy Quran, the very first condition is that you should have the wudu, right? So it is fard. When you are supposed to say sajda, okay, when you're reciting the Holy Quran, and there are 14 places of the sajda. So when you are supposed to make a sajda, you should have the wudu also, okay? Before offering prayer, you should be doing the wudu. So wudu is a first before the fard of the namaz, right? Now there are 4 farais in the wudu, integral and essential part without which your wudu would never be a wudu. So there were 4 were the washing parts, like washing the face, washing the hands until they're including your elbows, and washing your feet, and then once wiping out 1/4 of your head. There are the faraid, right? And last time I explained the method of the sunnah method of doing the masha. I said that once you wash your hand and dry them up without touching anything, you would start from here. I mean, forgive me for that. You would start from the beginning with these 3 fingers, the up front, okay? From here you would start. You would bring them down to the last part of your hairs, right? And then the 4th finger, this index finger, you would use for your inside of your ears. The thumbs, they would go back side of your ears, and this back part of your palms, you would turn and you would, dry up your nap, right? So this is what the masha is, right? So today I will explain there are sunan in the wudu also. So, okay, what is the sunnah? The very first sunnah that we commonly practice, and of course we should continue to practice that is what? Washing every single part during the wudu 3 times. So when we do 3 times, it is sunnah, right? Okay, the second thing is, what is the another sunnah? The another sunnah is saying Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim before doing wudu. What is the other sunnah? That after doing Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, you would wash your hands until here, right? So washing hands 3 times until here, this is another sunnah, right? And then you would wash your mouths 3 times, sunnah. Washing your nose 3 times, it is sunnah. Washing your face, all elbows, everything, this is called sunnah. There is another sunnah that you would do wudu in order. And order means what? Order means that you would begin with washing your hands, then you would wash your mouth and nose, and then face, and slowly, gradually, but in order you would proceed further. And then there is another sunnah, and what is it? Before drying up the previous organ, you should wash your another organ. For example, you're washing your hands, and all of a sudden a call comes, and you go out and you start listening, and then you want to continue from where you left. You start washing your mouth. This is not. Why? Because it has been turned dried. So before the previous organ gets dried up, okay, you cannot continue with that. So therefore, continuity must be ensured in such a way that the previous organ doesn't dry up. So no big gap between the 2 organs when you're washing out. So these were the few important sunnah in wudu, and I pray Allah Almighty that Allah Almighty gives us tawfiq to give or to do wudu whenever it is required, and give us the blessings of the doing wudu through the action of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, by following his actions, doing it in the sunnah way. And as you know, that Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam says, our saghair means small sins, okay, not grave sins. Our saghair, they are forgiven on every wudu. And even when you wash your hands, so sins committed by your hands, they are forgiven. Okay, sins when you wash your face, so anything involved that you did sin, so that is all forgiven. So whenever we do a wudu, it is a kind of forgiving activity, that Allah Almighty forgives our sins, small sins that are committed by our different limbs and organs. May Allah give us tawfiq to do and to pursue whatever the Prophet ﷺ sets examples for us. وَمَا عَلَيْنَا إِلَّا الْبَلَاغُ الْمُبِينُ. That's all for this sunnah.